All right. Welcome, everybody. Let me open this. And we'll get it going. Welcome, everyone. Andrew, are we all set? We're broadcasting?
We're all set.
We're live?
We are live.
All right. Well, excellent. Thanks, Andrew. A big shout out to Andrew Whitlock, who works at ACEEE. He supports the SEM, North American SEM Collaborative, works with Neil Elliott, who many of you may know, but he has been an absolute rock star in supporting Wendy and other members of the leadership team. So thank you so much, Andrew. Quick coronavirus public service announcement. I just want to let you guys know, you guys all have, you out there listening and participating on this webinar here today, you have the power to make a difference. We got some photos here. We did a little kind of a team building activity, our team at Stillwater did, and where basically we worked with a homeless shelter, and they were basically trying to find a way to help out and do work, kind of support people remotely and be safe. And so they had a thing where they said, yeah, if you could put together some sock lunches or some care kits, like they had like, you know, toothpaste and toothbrushes and wipes and things, and assemble these kits. If you can go to whenever you go to the store, buy extras of those things, and then in your the safety of your own home, you can put those together. In these cases here, we had employees that either did it themselves or enlisted their kids to kind of use it as a teachable moment for the kids to help out and to learn about helping others even during these trying times. I then drove around. You can see in the right side of the picture, there's a picture of the back of my old Suburban. Drove around from employee's house to employee's house, picking up their bags of care kits or sack lunches that they put together. I'd open the back doors. They walked up, put their stuff inside. We stayed distant from each other, and then I closed the doors. And so we had a contact-free exchange. And so yeah, it was a neat way to give back and really to kind of find some purpose. And so I'm just saying this to all of you. It definitely is a good thing, you know, mentally to have a sense of a greater purpose, that you're trying to do something bigger than you, or that you're trying to think of others. And this is just one idea. So hopefully you all have a chance to get out there and make an impact in your community or in other ways. So it looks like I'm not seeing, so let me see this. Okay, great. Hopefully you can see this now. Andrew, can you see my screen?
Yeah, thanks, Chad.
Perfect. All right. There's the photo, and the photos of our little team building activity. So yeah, so get out there and make a difference. You guys all have the ability to do that. And so this is a North American SEM Collaborative webinar. We will be using Mentimeter polls. So pull up your web browser and go to menti.com and type in the code 474846. Menti.com. You could also use your cell phone, but type in again 474846 or 474846 or 474,846. I'm flexible. You can do it however you want to do it. The question is, what, in 5 words or less, describe what you learned in the last 2 months. Oh man, I'm seeing some funny ones. Stock up on beans, that's pretty good. Gratitude rules. It is hard to believe we've already been at this for 2 months, 2 months of social distancing. It's really something. It's good to see patience continues to win. Webinars around home gyms are great. Meet your family. What day is it? Outstanding. Things change fast. Be humble, compassion. We had it so good. Yeah, for sure. And to repair your house. Yep. Wowzers. Nice. These are great. I see at least 63 responses here, which is lovely. It looks like we have 121 people on the line, which is great. So let it go for another moment here. I'm just kind of looking through and seeing some of these things. I miss concerts. Yeah, I do too. School teachers are saints. Yes, they are. Wow. Yeah. Read and be flexible. Yeah. Being okay with monotony. We don't need to fill our time up with so many activities. All right, this is great. Well, let's go to the topic at hand, which will be, but first, I'm sorry, before we get into the topic, which is M&V, we'll do the regional updates. And so, if you may recall, at the North American SEM Collaborative SEM Summit this last fall, we had updates from the different regional energy efficiency organizations, or RIOs, so like NEA and NEEP and SEA and so on, different parts of the region, different parts of the country. You may recall there were 2 states in the U.S. that were not represented by RIOs, or at least it wasn't clear that they were, at least for one of them. West Virginia was one, and the other was California. And California has been doing some really interesting things, and so we wanted to give them an opportunity to do some share out. So we have a few utilities that are represented. We've got Southern California Edison, which is Wing Han is the program manager. Wing, and actually I'll say all these folks unfortunately have a conflict today, and so speaking on Wing's behalf would be Richard Hart from Cascade Energy. Then I guess we could probably shift. Richard can then talk also about SoCal Gas, again, where he's talking on behalf of Glenda Towns. And then we'll have Nate Altfeather from Leidos speak about PG&E on behalf of Genrick Goffman. So Richard, if you are able to speak, and Andrew may need to set him up.
Chad, I don't see Richard Hart online, but we can go ahead and turn it over to Nate Altfeather.
Okay, sounds great. Nate, are you ready?
Hey everybody. So this is Nate Altfeather with Leidos, and we're implementing the SEM program for PG&E. And Genrick is on the phone as well, who's our PG&E rep that worked for this. And the fact that Richard isn't here at the moment may be okay, although I'm sure he's got some good, unique things to say, because the SEM program in California, the SEM program design is a statewide design. And each utility is hired implementers to follow this statewide design, which was developed by a third-party consultant, Sergio Diaz. And the design has a series of workshops that are meant to be done in cohort style, and also what's called site-specific activities, which are meant to be done individually at participant sites. These are prescribed in a schedule in this statewide design. The design has provisions for up to 3 2-year periods, 3 2-year participation periods, so total potential 6 years if customers want to stay in that long. For PG&E, we have 2 implementers. One of us is focusing on industrial manufacturing. That's the Leidos team. And then Clear Results is focusing on the food processing sector. And although all the implementers in California got started a little bit at different times, we're roughly all wrapping up or have recently wrapped up the first 2-year period of SEM using that design guide. And so the lessons learned and best practices that the CPUC out in California and all the utilities, we all work very closely together, that we've pulled together are being incorporated into the year 3 and 4 design guide. So the first design was for just the first 2 years. So that design is being worked out as we speak, and the different implementers are preparing to deliver the 3rd and 4th year of the SEM design. And I think most implementers are also beginning to recruit a new cohort to start the first year again. So a new group of participants to begin that first 1 and 2 year period. And so I'm trying to think if there's anything else to bring up, but it's been a really neat experience to have the big group of people working together, the different implementers, the CPUC, the utilities. We've met multiple times as a group and are working out the challenges inherent to SEM, right, that we all like to talk about and work on. So that's the status of the California landscape at a high level.
That's great. Thank you so much, Nate. That's really good to hear. And actually, Richard Hart has joined us. Richard, if you are unmute you, then you can provide some perspectives about kind of perhaps building on Nate and describing anything specific or particular about SoCal Edison or SoCal Gas.
Sure. Thanks very much. I apologize for being late here. I think there is a couple of things to build on what Nate was saying. The first thing is, I think we've all been very happy to report that SEM has provided very cost-effective savings for this program as part of the total energy efficiency portfolio. And I think we're also quite fortunate that SEM is continuing to provide those savings during a time when many other energy efficiency programs are stalling because of the current COVID and economic situation. So that's encouraging. I think the second thing is to build on what Nate was saying. It has been a very collaborative effort, and we've been really happy to see the PUC accept models through their evaluator and accept claimed savings. There's been, I think it's fair to say, a long history of challenge of accepting savings claimed by utilities in California. And so it's really good to see that we're off to a good start there. And I think the last piece is we've seen very solid engagement of account management teams, which I think in terms of building a solid foundation for the future is really important, that the account managers inside each utility are enjoying the participation of their particular customers in these programs. So that is why that's led us to the point that Nate was saying of recruiting new cohorts. So we started out with one cohort that is drawing to a close this summer, and we have 2 more cohorts that have already been launched and are in month 5 right now. One jointly funded by SoCal Edison and SoCal Gas, and one exclusively funded by SCE. So that's the status there. We currently have 3 cohorts operating in the territories. So that's been very positive. And I think, as Nate might have mentioned, we're also all contemplating continuation of these programs from the initial 2-year engagement into years 3 and 4. And so different utilities are contemplating that. And in fact, there is a consultant who's been allocated to, who's been engaged to provide a design for years 3 and 4, and then also to update our M&V. And so we're looking forward to having a more refined M&V guide for the statewide programs going forward.
That's great. Very on topic. Thank you, Richard. Excellent. Well, thank you so much. And again, Richard and Nate, I appreciate both of you individually, stepping up to provide some perspectives. Definitely California, it's a very large economy, in the United States, in North America, and definitely a lot of eyes have been on California, watching how the SEM programs unfold there, because we could definitely imagine them having a strong influence on the rest of North America. So thank you both. Excellent. So M&V, my clever title, SEM&V, but this is about the State of the Union of that. I should make a quick plug for M&V. If you're on this call, you're probably a fan of M&V to some extent, or you get the importance of it. For those people that don't get the importance of M&V, it's hard to overstate just how important it really is. It really, it impacts it could impact your entire design. It typically does. How you're going to go about measuring the impact of your program is paramount and a foundational question when you're launching into a program. If you don't have a defensible and still cost-effective way to go about that, then you can actually break your entire design. And so it's critical. So that is my quick for those who are out there, if you're trying to convince others who are not in this call about how important M&V is, definitely use that as some inspiration. Let's go to some of the questions we asked in the survey. We asked a couple, again, this topic is being the State of the Union to understand what people are doing right now. And we had a couple of questions. One was about what guidelines or protocols people may use for them or for their programs. And you can see here a few things. So one is many of you had your own guidelines or protocols. I remember the Energy Trust Industrial Program protocol or guideline from about 12 years ago. It was a front and back one pager, but it had some basic kind of expectations laid out in it. And that could be what many of your programs look like, which can be great. Again, using the industrial program from Energy Trust as an example, as one of the first SEM programs, pretty mature SEM programs over the last 10, 12 years. They've continued to mature their processes as they're documented in their own protocol. There are other protocols that many of you have. Many of them here, I've outlined the ones that are publicly available that you can get on the internet. Definitely one of the big ones, BPA, has definitely influenced a lot of other programs that have looked at and leaned on a lot of their guideline and how the continual revs of that have come out every couple of years for the past 10 years or so. There's been a couple of California guidelines that have come out in the last couple of years. The NMEC guide, normalized metered energy consumption guide, which is basically essentially energy models for facility-wide models, looking at a meter level, kind of spells out the specifics around that, versus the M&V guide for the California Industrial Program, SEM program, which is the counterpart to the design guide that Nate from Leidos mentioned a few minutes ago. So basically all the California IOU and industrial SEM programs are using those two things hand in hand. A couple of things to call out here: the UMP Unified Methods project, which basically brings together measurement methodologies for numerous different types of programs, but they have a chapter on SEM that's come out, I think, in the last year, that again is starting to see some uptake. And SDP, Superior Energy Performance, they've had an M&V protocol out for about 8 to 10 years. That is probably about 10 years, I guess. But it definitely has been a formative resource for a number of folks. Let's see. I've got links to all these in a couple of slides. Let's go to the next question, which was, have you relied on, or do you expect to rely on, any of the following EM&V resources? And highlighted a number of things here. So first of all, there are a couple of IEPEC papers that were published at IEPEC 2 years ago this summer. One was a methodology comparison, a very robust comparison done, which was very impressive, looking at the different outcomes of different methodologies, and it was very well done. The other one is basically trying to understand if a lighter modeling approach is good enough, and then comparing that to a more traditional kind of robust, what's the kitchen sink approach, but throwing lots of variables into a model versus a simplified model. And so both are very valuable resources. I highly recommend both of those. And then also there's a few papers that have come out of the Northwest SEM Collaborative. There's an M&V working group that's been meeting for and working on things relatively consistently for about the past 6 to 8 years. The first papers that they produced were around autocorrelation and multicollinearity, the two rock stars to call out that were involved in that. And those papers were BPA's Todd Amundsen and Clear Results, Carrie Macklin, but both very helpful to explain some those two topics, which are not widely understood by a lot of folks, and to help people understand how to think about those and how to go how to think about them in your M&V approaches. The last paper here is this modeling method selection guide, and so this is something that a few of us started a number of years ago. Myself, Steve Martin from Cascade for the Bonneville program, ESI, and a number of others, folks, Todd Amundsen as well, started. But I definitely want to call out specifically Sarah York from Cascade, as well as Tina Schnell from ASC, who both took over the M&V group and took this paper and led the charge to finish it up and get it published as a resource. So very excellent leadership by Tina and Sarah. This is an eye chart, but just so you know, from last time, as you may recall, we will provide these slides to you after this, and so you can have the links to go to get to these different papers, as well as the different guidelines, and then those symptoms expressed by a number of you. On that, we had featured a few comments about these resources. A couple of folks here. So one is John Feldman from ISO. He said he wasn't aware of these resources, but that they sounded real interesting. And for many of you know John, it's hard to know if John is being sarcastic about real interesting or if he's serious. But John is a fun and very smart guy. So yeah, I wanted to include that. Andrea Eborn is an intern out of Boise with Tacoma Power, and she wanted to attend this webinar. So welcome, Andrea. Todd Amundsen from Bonneville. Again, he's probably one of the nicest. Him and Steve Martin from Cascade are probably two of the nicest folks in our business, and are both also involved in M&V. Todd called out the forthcoming IPMVP Advanced M&V and NRA guidelines. And if we can unmute Todd. Todd said he'd be willing just to describe what these two things are for us momentarily. So there we go. Todd, can you hear us?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Oh, well, good morning. Yeah, we've been, I've been involved in the IPMVP for a number of years and got involved in a working group, the non-routine event, non-routine adjustment, and had many, excellent, exceptional people working on that, but it was kind of all volunteer, and chipping away at a guidebook was going to take a long time. And there was parallel to that an advanced M&V working group led by Leah Webster, and that was moving along about the same pace. And suddenly it kind of came a idea struck that if some funds could be put together to have a some consultant do the work to drive it at a much faster completion rate, that'd be desired. And so Seattle City Light, Bonneville Power put some funds together and kind of got that underway. So Leah has been the lead author throughout, and myself and others have been kind of working on the side, assisting as we can, helping with case studies that we've generalized from our years of experience in SEM and other M&V practices. And a white paper was developed and delivered to the public January of this year, and just broad overview of the non-routine event, non-routine adjustment methodologies, and advanced M&V for whole building, SEM, pay performance, energy efficiency as a service type projects. And the final guidebook. It could be 2 because it's getting pretty large, and it might split out as separate NRE, NRA, and advanced M&V guides. It's expected to be completed later this month, maybe into June.
Wow, wonderful. That's great. Todd, I can follow up with you after this and see if there's, if there's a link we can provide for folks to keep tabs on it. That would be very helpful.
Please, gladly.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you so much, Todd. That was very helpful.
Thanks.
The next comment came from Marcus Zeller from BC Hydro, and we had a few responses from BC Hydro, also from Greg LaHoo and from Tamara Berger. And one of the things that's going on up there is pretty interesting, and Marcus has agreed also to be unmute him. There we go. I think he's unmuted. Can you hear us, Marcus?
There we go. All right. Thank you very much. My
Yeah.
name is Marcus Zeller, and I work in the evaluation group of BC Hydro. And we were challenged with our first evaluation of SEM savings for very large industrial transmission customers. So those are the high energy or resource intensive industries like pulp and paper, mining, oil and gas, wood products, big sawmills, and large manufacturing. And it was really hard to figure out how we're going to evaluate the SEM savings. We looked at the top-down site-level analysis to measure the total impact before and after with models. But we found that very difficult because for us, the SEM baseline wasn't a point period in time, because we've had energy managers at some of these sites for over 10 years, and they practiced forms of SEM. We just didn't call it that way. We found that statistics are best described or best used in what did happen, but they're not necessarily a good predictor of what would have happened when business drivers and market forces constantly change on a daily, hourly basis in some of these large industrial facilities. It's kind of like driving a car through a rear view mirror only. Yes, you have 20/20 vision of what did happen, but it doesn't tell you where you're going. We found in our top-down analysis, top-down site-level analysis, that production is often in unique operating modes and near constant power. Multiple process equipment comes on and off in lines of production or batches. Modeling of those modes of operation is very difficult and even sort of unfruitful, because changes in these operating modes are driven by business drivers more than they are by SEM. We found that energy to production relationships are often weak, and that's due to the trade-offs within the operation with product quality, recovery rates. For example, when a mine runs into softer ore, it has big impact, or can have big impact, on energy use. Ore hardness is not measured. So when a mine runs into softer ore, they usually have trade-offs with higher production rates, or they grind it to a smaller particle size because they have the energy available to increase recovery rates, or they start blending feedstock to optimize the process. So these trade-offs are really business process operations and very difficult to model because they're not even measured at their fundamental principles. We found that industrial facilities are full of non-routine events that are frequent and complicated to model. We found in our top-down analysis that known energy efficiency projects or known events that impact energy use didn't even show up in the QSUM. And we're talking about hourly models. We're not, like, even in very detailed models, we couldn't show events that we knew for sure because they were sub-metered and at the project level. So if we can't model what we know, then how can the top-down energy model show what we don't know? So that was kind of our basis. So we figured out a new method to model the unreported difference in energy use. Rather than looking at the total impact and subtract the capital projects from it, we said, let's look at the baseline, subtract what we know in terms of capital projects, in terms of plant shutdowns, in terms of plant expansions, force majeure. And we had the privilege of utilizing our large industrial rate mechanism, which requires every customer to make adjustments and report these large changes in energy use for billing purposes. So we utilized that information, and we looked at the difference between that adjusted base load and the actual energy use and called it the energy gap. So we looked at, it's almost like we looked at a triple or quadruple difference in difference method. So first we looked at the difference in that energy gap on an annual basis at the site level. Then we looked at the difference of that difference over time, and we chose a 4-year period. Then we looked at that gap of unreported energy use, or the slope of that gap over a 4-year period of time, to figure out if it's trending up or trending down. Is the gap getting bigger, which means there's potential of unreported reduction in energy, or is it getting smaller and there's potential of unreported growth in energy? So we looked at that. Then we separated into groups of SEM participation, SEM participants with reported savings, SEM participants with not reported savings, and then also SEM non-participants. So we had 3 groups, and then by quasi-experimental design, it's kind of comparing the results of each group. And we found, and that's by looking at the difference between the SEM group with reported savings and the ones and the non-participants, it also gave us a gross savings and a net savings for SEM. So the method that we chose had some limitations because we heavily relied on the transmission customer billing data. The samples are fairly small with consistent data over the 4 years that we chose. We did not use econometric modeling or changes in production, and we did not evaluate persistence. However, we did find a big difference between the groups. So the SEM participants did show an increase in the gap and savings of like 1.6% per year of consumption, whereas the SEM non-participant group only showed 0.2% reduction in that gap over time. So the difference was tested statistically and found that it's, even though the statistics within each group is kind of not the best because of the small sample size, the difference between the groups was very significant. So that's kind of the method that we developed and that we're tried and showed for our very large industrial evaluation. We hope that we can modify it and maybe even simplify it to model our smaller or medium-sized industrial facilities and the cohorts. And we're also in the process of publishing some papers and through ACEEE and IEPC to demonstrate the methodology and the results. Thank you.
Marcus, thank you so much. That's great information, and thank you for stepping up, you and Todd, for both hopping in to provide your perspectives. Definitely, this thing that Marcus is describing is definitely hits on one of the themes that came up in this survey, the survey of the participants here in this webinar, where people are looking for either solutions to have a more simplified approach to M&V, or a solution for when our traditional modeling just doesn't work, and something that's based upon site level modeling is not going to happen. So So this was great, and definitely we look forward to keeping in touch with you and finding out how all that goes. So the next slide, we had a question we asked about people to rate their opinion of how important several EM&V related issues are. And let me help you to understand what this thing is saying. So, so basically we have, we get the questions or the different options across the bottom. The models vary too much between one organization to the next one, implementer, SEM implementer to the next. The models are too complex and they have too many variables in them, or different kinds of, yeah, I guess I'll say variables for lack of a better term. That we need more granular energy data, that we need better driver data, that we need a better way to reconcile other program types, which we'll go into later on here. Need a better approach overall for negative savings as a specific impact, a common outcome of I would say suboptimal reconciliation between programs. SEM savings persistence, kind of locking in on what how persistent SEM savings should be. Multi-year SEM&V, like how do you treat, you know, similar, partially related to this previous point, but how do you calculate them and be, how do you perform M&V for multi-year SEM programs? Dealing with SEM as it relates to programs also that have that are focused on demand response, distributed generation, or low carbon electrification. The topic of customer understanding around M&V, and then finally the coronavirus shutdown. So you can see we basically had people respond to say, basically going from not at all important on a topic to being extremely important. And these charts, while it's good to see these distributions, it may be a little hard to kind of interpret them. So what I did also include across the top up here is these basically some averages of these scores. And so you can basically see, you can see here that multi-year SEM&V would appear to be one of the top, or the top topic, followed by SEM savings persistence. Then with model complexity, need for more granular energy data, and the coronavirus shutdown going to the next few. So that's kind of your top 5. Actually, sorry, also better reconciliation of to other program types. All of these had at least some folks saying that these are extremely important, and again, some had quite a few. So let's go into those. So, and I'm sorry, before we get into it, but we did have some other issues people did raise. So one was, again, how to modify energy models to account for business changes from coronavirus. Let me, that's great. We had basically, yeah, the topic came up of using distinctive M&V approaches for different sectors. This is in a different way. This is highlighted by Katie Harper, who's been doing SEM for a long time with Energy Trust, talking about kind of looking backwards, looking historically at how essentially SEM worked in the last recession about 10 years ago to have some ideas on how to work within the current economic state. But that may be, she was calling it, that may be a different animal when it comes to commercial. We've got a large commercial building portfolio. Let's see, and yeah, like I said before, how good is good enough? That's very important. And so let's get into a few of these things. So one, the corona, I'm going to call it corona shut. The coronavirus shutdown of buildings or of manufacturing, or it could even be where manufacturing is far busier than it would have been, that it typically is for certain sectors, subsectors of manufacturing. And I say either far busier or far slower for different operations, far outside of the norm of, you know, what the typical, what happening in the baseline period. So for that, I just put a few notes here, and then I would like to open up a Mentimeter poll to ask some people some perspectives. My own personal thoughts are on the corona shut in SEM M&V is one point is that duration is a thing. So if the period we're in now, this atypical period. If it's short, let's say it's less than 6 months, we may have one solution for how you treat that period, versus if it's longer than 6 months, then we may need a different modeling approach or something else that's not modeling, like a bottom-up or a deemed or some other type of approach. So duration's one. Second is recurrence. So if the corona shut essentially happens again in November or some other period within the next year, then that, frankly don't have a great answer, but I guess trying to anticipate that, and my point here is that kind of thinking about this, how having an M&V approach will help you answer the first part, like, you know, how to handle M&V for right now, and then how do you handle it if this happens again, which is a good chance it could. And then lastly, the third point about this is the how you think about this probably could be different, could vary based upon when that corona shut happens. So if you're going to use this period right now for a baseline for a cohort you're launching over this next year, then that could be one solution. Versus if you're in a first year right now, or you're in a multiple year program right now, then each of those could be very different. And so for those of you who don't do modeling all the time, usually when you're modeling, you're talking about you need 2 years, or really 2 periods, right? Baseline and treatment. And so when that corona shut happens during baseline or during treatment, it's going to impact things. And so you may need to have 3 years. You may need to have other things to think about. And then once you get through the corona shut, then what does normal look like? So there are some big questions there. So let's go back to Mentimeter. I'd like folks to share their thoughts on M&V during or after COVID. And that could include, Chad, you're wrong about duration, or something else, or the other insights people have. So go to menti.com, type in the code. If you closed your web browser or on your phone, type in menti.com, type in 47, 48, 46, and share your thoughts. You can see some responses coming in. Long, non-routine adjustments, yeah. Increased use of bottom up, that's good, definitely good. Could be a good technique for sure. Necessary to use baseline adjustments, yeah. Measure and model energy efficiency, case-by-case basis, or case-by-case analysis. Hitting the pause button, shifting the comparison periods, noting the COVID timeframe in the results, standardizing an approach to M&V where possible. It's going to be very valuable. I'll call it new ones here. Persistence for the shutdown savings, that's a great question. Backcasting, yep. So assuming you can build a model later, or again, yeah, basically backcast, if you're not familiar, is basically kind of a flip of the forecasting approach most programs use right now. Baselines may become irrelevant, yep. Industry consensus on how to handle this would be helpful since it's nationwide. Great idea. If you recall, in last month's webinar, we took your feedback on the Menti polls and put that back into the slide deck that we send out. And so we will distill this information out, and if we need to put it into a couple of slides with some great ideas, then we'll do that. Got a few other responses coming in. Delaying rebaseline, hitting the reset button. I love this point. Where'd it go? We're fooling ourselves if we think we understand the new normal. I agree. My personal opinion is if you think you've got a good handle on this, you probably don't totally understand it all. This is pretty. Actually, I saw a note from David Goldstein, who's a person I admire quite a bit at NRDC, but brilliant guy, and he was yeah. I would say dumbfounded, but definitely was like, wow, this is really tough to figure out. So yeah, all right, this is great. So thank you so much for your responses. Go back to the content here. Savings persistence, we won't have a Menti poll in this, but I do want to call out Energy Trust of Oregon. I feel like I'm talking about Energy Trust of Oregon a lot today. But they, the timing of this is interesting. They had an industrial O&M persistence study that just was released in the last week. And many of you have taken a look at this already. If you haven't, again, this link will be in the slide deck that we'll send out to you. But very interesting. It talks about for two things. One is that it does it was DNVGL that did the research that created the study. But one that cataloged, that looked at persistence, at measure life across programs, that other programs, and then second, did their own analysis of Energy Trust data over a long period of time, and were able to basically come up with a recommendation to revise to a new measure life. But you know what? I'm not going to tell you what it is, because this way you kind of have to go out yourself and check out the paper. It's great, really good paper. Next is SEM&V combined with DR, demand response, distributed generation, low carbon electrification. There's some questions that I put in here as well that we'll share out. BPA and Cascade did a paper it was published in the 2017 ACEEE Industrial Summer Study about SEM with DR, and asked if they could be integrated. They looked at it kind of at a very high level. They looked at it kind of broader than SEM. They looked at it within SEM, and then they even looked at it looking at data within some facilities, which I found it very interesting. So, for example, the idea of a post-DR rebound effect in cold storage. So if you shut down your chilling, if you maybe over chill it ahead of time, if you have a certain kind of room to play around with how cold you make that cold storage facility, if you get a band to work within, and you're able to shut things down, then how much is a rebound effect, and how does that affect energy efficiency? Again, I think there's a great paper, and if you're interested in understanding how those relate, it's a good one. A couple of other points here about DG and low carbon electrification. These are some good questions, which I don't have a lot of resources on, but I wanted to share them and kind of pose them to the group. In the interest of time, then we're going to keep moving and share a few more things that you had all discussed. What is exciting to you about where things are headed with M&V for SEM? Definitely a few things to call out. Standardization and formalization as we get better and better there in how we're doing this, and we're kind of locking in on a consensus approaches, which will make us really essentially drive higher quality in what we're doing. Less Wild West, more real improvement. A few of the things here, let's see. Yeah, definitely data getting better. Simplification, of course. Simplification can reduce cost and make models easier to maintain over time. So some good things there to call out. Some concerns that people raised. One was this kind of trying to mathematically solve a problem. It needs a more holistic solution. And this one's an interesting one. If we're only using these models, which have some limitations that we all know, then that can be a trick. And we may need to kind of step back and kind of look at the whole forest versus going tree. Another thing here is negative savings. So when we talk about reconciling programs, we've got a custom program that has a certain set of, assumptions that it's based around to how you're going to measure it for pre-post data logging and so on for a compressor, versus an SEM program that looking at the entire facility that's capturing all kinds of things that are happening. Some are energy related and some are not. And if that measurement period is if you're measuring through an entire year versus if you're calculating savings from a smaller period and then doing a projection, basically you're taking these sets of assumptions and trying to jam them together. And I was talking to Peter Thurkelson from LBNL, Lawrence Berkeley, and I was talking to him. I said, yeah, it seems like we're trying to compare apples and oranges. And he said, no, Chad, it's worse than that. It's like trying to take an apple and pull it out of an orange. And so I think it's a great way to think about this, is that these are challenging. And I know we have to in some way need to make sure we're not double counting. but then we want to make sure that we're not penalizing customers, perhaps, or putting unrealistic expectations. I think this comment here, where this came from Beth Robin Weiler from PSE, great energy engineer there. We're talking about an energy manager shouldn't lead to a consumption increase, and so the programs or customers shouldn't be penalized when equipment fails or is legitimately put in override mode. When it's the energy manager who actually identifies these things and returns a system to correct operations. So again, there's definitely some more for us to work on that. And in a moment, Wendy will highlight, we do have a negative savings survey that is out. Let's see. There were some other questions that we're not asking, which were great, some deeper thought points we have here. But in the interest of time, I'm going to go to Wendy, and we could get Wendy to get muted. There she is.
I'm here.
Hello, Wendy.
Hi there. All right, just some great activities we've got going on, staying in the virtual world. So the first is our webinar series continues on June 4th with integrated demand side management and SEM, which will be coming up here in a short month. And then we've got SEM and diversity, equity, and inclusion coming up on the 7th of July. And then the SEM 2030 webinar will be August 5th. And then also there are some other things coming on. As you guys know, the SEM Summit is every summer at the ACEEE Summer Study. We are currently working with ACEEE to figure out what that looks like if we go virtual. I think I'll place the bets on being virtual. So right now we're still planning on holding this in Pacific Grove, California in August. However, you can expect an announcement probably coming out in the next month or so about whether or not that will continue and if we'll switch to virtual. If we do switch to virtual, we're working with ACEEE to figure out how we can get all the great SEM papers presented to you guys and also do the SEM Summit virtually. So just stay tuned for that. We also have the negative savings survey, which is just wrapping up. And so you may expect to see another negative savings survey coming out depending on what the research finds. So this is one of the working groups that we're focusing on right now. We put a survey out after the last webinar and we got some great feedback. And so we may refine that for our research purposes. So heads up there, we'll make an announcement if that does end up happening. And then we're plugging along with our research based on SEM cost effectiveness. So this is our first funded research paper sponsored with LBNL and ACEEE. We're excited to say we've done the literature review of this. Andrew Whitlock and the ACEEE staff and those folks at LBNL have really been pushing this forward along with John Nichols and Peter Bassett on our leadership team. We plan to present out our findings thus far at the SEM Summit with that. So we're taking a North American approach on looking at that cost effectiveness. Yep, that's I think where we are, Chad.
That's great. Thanks, Wendy. Like Wendy said, we will. This is a very crazy small font, but I wanted to squeeze it in right here. Was the link to the negative savings survey, but I'll confirm with Greg Baker from BESC as our lead on this to make sure that this is indeed the one we want to have people respond to, and that again this will be in the deck that you will all receive. Great, thank you, Wendy. So then let's go. Let's ask you all, sorry. I'm gonna leave it open. It's 11:54 Pacific time, but I'll ask for people to do one more poll. See me having this do this real time. And present. So if you're in your Mentimeter poll, 47, 48, 46, what do you hope for in M&V in the next year? What do you, perhaps we asked the question before about being excited about, hopefully this discussion here today may have given you some inspiration, some ideas, made you feel that some of the things you were potentially excited about were, that you're not alone on those things. Or maybe open up some new ideas. What do you hope for in M&V? Savings. Yeah, that'd be great. Valid 2020 savings. Yeah, that'd be lovely. Yeah. Clear pathway for disruptive events like COVID. I know we've had a couple of, how to say it, climate-related events, at least impacted in Oregon in the last couple of years. And so having solutions to handle different types of events, because they will likely happen in the future. Simplification. Savings persistence. Read that paper, that Energy Trust paper, which you can also link out. It is a good one. Good consistency. Get the cohorts ready for third-party review. Quick feedback from evaluators. Yes, getting the feedback 2 years later is not as helpful as it could be. Yeah, less M&V and more deemed savings. You know, this is one of those things where I'm looking at coronavirus and what's happening to our, you know, what might need to happen to our M&V, and maybe this is the thing that may force us to explore a deemed approach, which can really simplify things and be very easy to understand and maybe less, you know, have a less exacting precision, but it may work pretty well enough perhaps. And so this could be the thing that's like a catalyst for us to force us into that. Or not to force us into that, but to enable us to explore it than when we would have stayed with the status quo before. All right. A couple others. Yeah. Yeah. So great. Okay. Well, then I think at this point, I would like to give you at least a couple minutes back to your day. M&V is good stuff. Very important. I'm glad you've all been here and being a part of this conversation. We'll send this deck out. If you have any other ideas, things you want to add to it or highlight, I think you all have at least my email address, and you can just drop me a line and I'll be sure to include it. Again, I want to thank Richard Hart and Nate Altfeather, who spoke on behalf of the California Program Administrators, as well as Marcus Zeller and to the SEM Collaborative Leadership Team, headed by Wendy and with many rock stars. And finally, you can see this photo here. This is a photo. This is of, if you're familiar with Shackleton, the Shackleton expedition in Antarctica about a little over 100 years ago, where he and his crew were stuck on the ice for 2 years, did not lose a soul. And a big part of it was kind of having one of his leadership techniques he had was really to kind of bring people together, focus them on some tasks, and to really again, to almost to use that harsh experience as a way to grow stronger together. And so hopefully you all see that as this is where we are right now, and hopefully you're all growing in your relationships with family or with your coworkers or customers or clients. So we wish you all the best, stay well, and take care. Thank you so much.